All right, we are live. Welcome everyone to another edition of Deconversion Stories. Today I'm chatting with my friend Puck, who has been doing some stuff on a channel called Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. And he also has, he's part of the Facebook page, am I saying? I've got all the Facebook links and his Twitter and the link to the YouTube channel that he takes part in. And he's also been doing some other stuff in people's other shows and stuff like that. He's been in one of my after parties already. So we're going to do one today. So think about it and whether or not you want to join. And you can send me a message in Twitter for later on if you do want to join us. I can go for a little over an hour, but then I do have a commitment that I have to keep. So, yeah, but we'll get into it. Anyways, Puck, you know what I do here? I chat with people about their walking away from their faiths or whatever that may have been, or their beliefs, whatever they would have been, even if you believed in Bigfoot, for crying out loud. But that sort of thing. But anyway, so why don't you kind of take us back to the earliest memories you have of starting to figure things out, and that journey taking you to the atheist activist that you are today.
I love that you bring up Bigfoot. First of all, is the audio okay? Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned Bigfoot, because one of my earliest memories, like even from a very young age, I loved to read. And okay, see, Randy, thanks. I see what you did there. They like to collect like Reader's Digest books and books that you could order off of Reader's Digest. And one of them, I remember there was a book called Into the Unknown. And in this book, Into the Unknown, they talk about a lot of paranormal stuff, like crystal skulls and cryptozoology and all that, and UFOs, whatever. And I was like, what, 5, 6? I wasn't even reading the articles. I was just looking at all the cool pictures, right? And so, like, that cryptozoology interested me very, very early. Like, before I even knew what theological thoughts were, I was like there with the Bigfoot stuff. And of course, I didn't know any better, right? So I just look at this and I just say, oh, this must all be true. Okay. I mean, what am I going to do? I can't argue with that, right?
Sure.
But yeah, it thank goodness I developed a healthy dose of skepticism after that. So, yeah. As far as religion goes, you know what? This is my first time like really getting to really talk too much about this all in one channel. So I appreciate the opportunity, first of all. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I was my parents were Filipino Catholic, and I was born and raised in Alaska. But in my earlier days, it wasn't like all that serious, right? Like we would go to mass on occasion. They would try to go every week, but it didn't always work out. And when it didn't work out, a big deal wasn't made out of it.
Sure.
They weren't too heavy about making sure you didn't eat meat on Fridays, except for Good Friday. They just kind of went, and I think
Almost like traditionalists.
Yeah, and I think a large part of it is they did it because their family did it. And my dad grew up with 2 brothers and 2 sisters. They were all up in Alaska with him. So it was more like, well, they're doing it, so we ought to do it too. Does that make sense? It's like it's more to be seen going to church rather than actually going to church.
Right.
And so, I did all the usual rites of initiation for Catholicism. Baptism, of course, that happened when I was a baby. And then
how much of Jesus do you figure you've eaten?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we will get into transubstantiation because that actually transubstantiation, the first time I started really thinking about it, this is where I start to make that screeching left turn into atheism. Okay. Yeah. But it didn't happen until I could 15, 16 years old. That's the age of confirmation for most Catholics, right? This is where you're grown up now. You're supposed to be able to make your own decision about whether or not you want to join the church. And they sent me to 2 years of catechism classes before this. And in those 2 years, I was like, I tried to absorb as much of the information as I could, tried to learn all of it. And I was like, you know what? There's some things that are not adding up. There's some things that just don't make sense to me. And out of respect for there must have been about 30 other kids who were in that catechism class with me. And I was out of respect for them. They're taking it seriously. It means something to them. I will forego the ceremony until I have settled things for myself. And I think that was a fair answer. I'm not ready. Let me think about it, and then I'll get back to you after I've done some research. That answer did not go over very well with the family. And like, I think it was my mom that said something like she thought of herself as a bad parent, because I did not follow along in her religious beliefs. I think there might be something to that,
Interesting.
where the idea of rejecting a religious belief is almost insulting in a parental sense. Right. And after that, it kind of turned a corner because my mom kind of started taking religion a lot more seriously. She started
Really?
getting books on catechism and apologetics and like actually studying this stuff.
Do you think
In
she's
a
doing
way,
that to try and swing you back over? Do you think that was
I
the
think
intent?
so. I think so. And like because it was something that like I didn't think that they were that serious about it. I thought they were more like insurance Catholics. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
really buy into, but just in case it's true,
Yeah.
we should go and we should donate our income. You know, just in case there is a God and just in case there is a hell. At least we're on the good side because you know we did.
That's the what do you call it? It's not coming to me right now.
Pascal's wager.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, they are living examples of Pascal's wager until I said, no, I'm not going to get confirmed. And then suddenly my mom's just like all in. Suddenly, you know, the deacon and the priest are on speed dial. And my sister got sent to a Catholic school when she was 5-6 years old. You know, they wanted to make sure that they raised her right. You know, they say if you make mistakes, keep trying. And that's why I have a little sister.
We'll call that a win.
My in-laws are Dodgers 3 out of 4. Their kids are no longer religious. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. But I wasn't. You know, like I still wanted to try to figure this out. My no was not no. My no was not. My no is not yet. Does that make sense? Now I talked to a cousin of mine who had gone through confirmation and who I figured was more knowledgeable than me. And I said, okay, let's sit down and actually think this through in a biblical sense. All right, let's talk about, and the issue that I brought up was transubstantiation. Exactly. Does the communion host actually turn into the body and blood of Jesus Christ? And we scoured the Gospels trying to find anywhere in there that it actually says that directly.
Right.
You're not going to find it. Yeah. It makes some kind of references like take this and you know, take from my body and my blood,
my body and
yeah. And so this was, if you want to call it that, my very first ever theological discussion. And now you remember this was 1996, so the internet really wasn't a thing. You couldn't just Google it and find it. The internet was in its infancy, right? And maybe you'd find some Angel Fire fan page that talks about relics and transubstantiation, but you're not going to find it. I am that old. Do you remember when you used to like try to come up with like the coolest name ever for your email address?
Yeah.
Right. You would put your like and you'd come up with all these like really long, fancy, and then the numbers at the end of it, of course. And I see that tradition stuck with you very nicely.
Well, yeah. This was intentional, though, right? It was the 604 is my area code. So.
Oh yeah, British Columbia, right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, mine was, and please, just to let you guys know how seriously I took being religious, mine was in nomine domini at hotmail.com, which is Latin for in the name of God.
Mm-hmm.
So I was that serious about it. I mean, I wanted to find out if this was real, but you know, of course, the Bible's not supplying any answers over there. So I was like, all right, I spent 1995. Very nice. I just kept studying and I kept looking at this, and finally I said, okay, you're not going to find the answers in Catholicism in the Bible. This isn't working out. But I kept looking because I still wanted to believe. I don't know if I wanted to believe in God or if I didn't. Just it didn't occur to me at the time that God could not exist. It was just so ingrained into me that the possibility would just. I don't know how to explain it, but you've talked to a lot of people. Have you heard this before?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Like even I felt that way at an early age. Like I wasn't sure if I believed, but I'm like I always thought that like it's got to be there. Everyone keeps saying, right? So
right.
I would talk to him from time to time with no results, like ever. But anyway, yeah. So I carried that thought with me for as long as I could, and then I just got out of it.
Yeah, but it just like for whatever, and I don't have a good reason. I'm sorry, I don't have a good reason, but I just did not at the time drop the belief in God. Right. But as I was looking around, the two churches that I saw that really claimed to have authority, that really claimed to say, "Yep, we have the truth," is the Catholics, and then on the extreme end, you have the Mormons. And they claim, both of them claim to have received authority directly from Christ. In the Catholics, they say the priesthood passed down to Peter, and then there's a succession of popes, right?
Mhm.
And the Mormons claim that there's a period of apostasy where the priesthood was lost, later to be recovered in Midwest United States by Joseph Smith. And then the chain of prophets goes on from there. So that struck me as interesting. By the way, I'm not presenting any of this as fact. I'm just telling you like what I discovered as I was going through my story. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I am not at all saying that this is how the Mormon church is actually structured or founded. So, hit me in the comments if you think that I'm inaccurate, because I probably am. And it also didn't help that I had a couple of very, very close friends who were Mormon, who were more than happy to talk to me about my beliefs, especially once they found out I didn't want to be Catholic. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So,
we could win one here, guys.
yeah. And that's the beautiful thing about religions who like to spread their word, is they see a non-believer as an opportunity, right?
Yep.
It's like he's already a Mormon, he just doesn't know it yet. So I actually took the full range of missionary discussions, and I found out, because I lived in Alaska, right? And Alaska is a pretty mixed bag community. You're going to find a lot of different religious beliefs there, and a lot that you don't find in very many other places. Like Eastern Orthodoxy, it's actually a pretty big deal there.
That's where Prophet of Zod lives too, in Alaska.
Prophet of Zod lives in Alaska?
Yes, sir.
Oh, see, look at this. I've been watching that guy for what, like a year now. I love just how worldwide we are. And I saw for the first time, I actually saw Nervardia, and she's in Australia, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. See, it's wonderful. Oh,
she's a fellow chemist, actually. She's far more knowledgeable at it than I am, though. So, and I think basic shit that I needed for my job, basically.
One thing that I think is a little bit lacking is, and it's probably not lacking, I just haven't found it yet, is cultural specific or region specific atheism, right? Like being an atheist in the Philippines is probably very different from being an atheist in the United States, very different from being an atheist in Norway, right? Yeah. So like, I wish there was a Filipino community out there, because in the Philippines, it's not so much the church and believing in God, but the church is so much a part of your family, right? It's like sometimes your extended family, that's when you get together with them, is during mass. And the Filipino community in Alaska was so large that they actually had a church there that offered a mass in the Filipino native language once a month. And if the Catholics can cater to them, certainly the atheist community should have some representation and outreach into there also. It probably exists, but I just haven't really dug that deeply into this. I'm kind of new. Okay. Yeah. I think I reached out to you, what was it, in January or February? Because I saw a video on, what was it, David Worley? I think you were on with David Worley, and I saw that, and somebody was talking about how you like to collect deconversion stories, and I wrote to you like way back then. I said, if you're still collecting, I think I have one. And then it took this long to put it together, and that's cool. That's fine. I mean,
I get booked I'm booked well in advance, so
you are, and that's beautiful. Like, being a new atheist online activist myself, booking is the hardest thing for me, right? My Rolodex is not that deep, but I also find that once you book a couple of people, suddenly the floodgates open, and there's a lot of people who are willing to be, to talk to you on your show.
Oh, sure. And one thing you should do, what I do, is I put my email address in the description box. And I say, if you have a story you want to share, send me an email. And I get them quite often. I even get them from people that aren't atheists. Like I get, I want to come on your channel and discuss whether or not the Quran is compatible with science. I'm like, that's not what I do, man.
That's not your shtick. Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah. Okay.
It is a way, but anyway.
Yeah. So not to derail it, but then I spent some time working with the Mormon Church, and I was actually baptized Mormon. Didn't go very deep into it. For those of you who are familiar with the Mormon Church, I was in the priesthood in the Order of Aaron, but I was not far enough to be in the Order of Melchizedek, which if you're familiar with those terms, it's like how far
the leader of the Children of the Corn or something.
Malachi, but
that's Malachi, right. Similar, I don't know. I get them
Melchizedek is a name that's mentioned like exactly once in the Bible, but somehow they have a whole order of priesthood based on this, and it's not really. It's based on how old you are and chic. How long you've been in the church. What's that?
It's very chic.
It is, and even like, and those are like, of course, this is the Mormon Church, so only the men can have priesthood, right? And actually, it's only very recently that people of color were allowed to hold the priesthood. So the little. If you talked to Exmo Lex about a week ago, didn't you? Oh, she could have told you a lot more stories than I could have. That was a beautiful interview. But I stuck around in there for a little while until I was like, you know what? And I was studious in there too, right? Like I got the books and I did the research and whatnot. And then even after more research, I came to the same conclusion that I did with Catholicism. This isn't adding up. There are too many things that are ad hoc explanations. There are too many things that aren't making sense. There are too many things that seem to be contradicting with each other. All right, fine. I'm going to start from scratch, okay? Because I am the smartest person in the world, and if anybody's going to figure this out, it's going to be me, right? So
you hold yourself fairly high regard, I see.
I was young, I was stupid. I acknowledge that now. But what am I going to do? I'm 20 years old. I'm not, the research that I'm doing isn't lining up with anything else. I'm just going to do it myself. But I knew not to do it by myself. Right. So I had an online, again, please remember, this was like 1999, 2000. I started an online forum on Usenet, of all things, talking about Bible studies. And let's just start from Genesis 1 and work our way off to Revelation, I forget what. And let's just go through this and figure out what we're supposed to believe. And you don't even get out of chapter 1 in Genesis before you run into massive contradictions. Mm-hmm. Right? Were humans made first or were animals made first? Well, depends on which version of the story you want. How many animals of each kind were allowed on the ark? Again, depending on is it 2 by 2 or is it 2? 7. And then the clean animals were allowed to have 7 pairs on there for sacrificial purposes, right? So I was like, okay, none of this is making any sort of sense. I don't think anyone has their act together when it comes to this Bible. And the more I looked into it, the more I saw those contradictions. The more I looked into what different religions believe, the more I was like, you know what? If there is a God out there and this God is trying to control this message, he's doing a lousy job of doing so. And if the most important message that this God has for us is that he wants to have a relationship with us and that he wants us to know that he loves us and that he did the whole sacrifice my son thing, he did it in what has to be the dumbest way possible. Well, by leaving no way to trace back the evidence, no way to see if the sacrifice actually did something meaningful to people in the afterlife, and no apparent means of verifiable communication.
Well, I always start with this not premise, but idea. God is supposed to be all-knowing,
right?
So he would know everything, past, present, future, right? Everything that's ever going to happen in the universe that he allegedly created, he knows it all. Mm-hmm. This whole thing's a setup because he already knew that he put the tree in the garden, and he already knew Adam and Eve were going to break the rules and eat from the tree, and then the necessity for sin, and then of course he would have to make a son or himself or whatever fucking version you believe, and send himself to the earth to sacrifice himself to absolve you of the sin that he already set you up for. So then, to my mind, the whole thing is fucking set up to begin with, because he already knew that the Holocaust was going to happen, did fuck all about it. He already knew that all those priests were going to rape children, did fuck all about it. He already knew that some priests were going to rape nuns, did fuck all about it. So what good is he? Like, what's he here for? Was he whispering in there, I'm going to get you later? Like, so what? Do something about it now, motherfucker. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, the problem, I did not know it was called that at the time, but the problem of evil weighed heavily on me. It's like, bad things happen that if I was to witness this happening, or if I knew that it was about to happen, I would feel an obligation to do what I can to prevent it. Right?
God used entrapment.
Yes.
Like a crooked cop.
Hi, Pine Snake. It's good to see you again. Like if I would feel compelled to step in and stop a dangerous or violent situation, God must be more powerful than me if he exists. And if he chooses to just stand back and say, okay, y'all are on your own, like either that's not the best thing to do, or he can't do anything about it, or like, it's like nothing is adding up. Everything is contradicting. Yeah. Or such a God does not exist. And I think, and I think that's when it was like, I think it must have been about 22, 23 when I just wrapped my mind around, and I was like, okay, none of this is adding up. None of this is lining up at all. The one answer that makes the most sense to answer all of this is that God was made up.
Yep. Like
And
all the ones that came before him.
yeah. And I mean, like, I can understand why, and I can understand why it's comforting, and I can understand why, you know, like my aging grandparents would want to hold on to some belief like that. And be coming from a very large family, I can understand why it's a comfort that they would think that they would see their loved ones again. I get why it's appealing. I don't understand how it could be real.
Yeah, it's kind of a
yeah.
To me, it's just like, people stop, like fucking stop, because obviously this guy's a fucking dickhead. Because if he is there and he's doing jack shit about all this shit, then why would you worship something like that?
Yeah, like even if he was real, he's obviously not really worth worshiping. So.
He's over a couple galaxies over right now, working on a new planet that it will eventually become atheists too.
You know, Mormons actually believe that. Like, if you are holy enough as you are living, you get to be your own God, and you get your own universe to do whatever you want to do with. It's just one of the weirder aspect. Now, I can't speak for it. I'm certainly no expert in Mormon theology, sure. But yeah, there's some weird stuff.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, and the deeper you go, you start going into temple ceremonies and baptisms for the dead. Oh, that was a fun one when I found out about baptism for the dead. Yeah, it's like, I get it. It's an answer to the question of what happened to people who never heard the gospel message, right? Like, that's a popular one we like to ask Christians. It's like, there are billions of people who've never gotten the opportunity to hear God. Are they all going to hell? Well, no, the Mormon answer for that is that a living person is allowed to be baptized in their name to give them the opportunity to hear the gospel in the afterlife.
How the fuck does that work?
I don't have an answer for that. I mean, I suppose it's at least an answer, but there's no. I'm
gonna do this for my boy Puck here. He's gonna come to heaven with me. Like, what the fuck is that shit?
Yeah, and then it asks some interesting questions about consent, like, do I want to be baptized for, right? Like, if there is some sort of afterlife, I would like to think that there is still some bodily consent. I don't even like it when people pray for me, so why would I want to be baptized?
I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the physicist or physicist/cosmologist Sean Carroll?
I've heard the name. I'm not familiar with the work.
He's got a whole article on why afterlives are impossible. They do not work with the world with how physics works. So
okay, like, I have my own
afterlife.
Like, I have my own questions about consciousness also, and whatnot. And I get that consciousness is a hard problem to solve, and that atheism / naturalism, but that's the thing. Like, we're at least working on trying to find the answer. We acknowledge there's a gap. Let's try to figure it out.
We know the part of the brain it's derived from, but how that all works and shit is what they're still working on.
We know it's in here somewhere, and I get that, but it's like, but at least we, I guess the biggest problem that I have with using the religious answer for this is, once you think you have that answer, you stop looking for more answers. Does that make sense? Like, if you're convinced that consciousness is the result of your soul being part of you stop trying to find out more about the brain. And I wish that people would do a little bit more research rather than commit to an answer and then try to prove that answer correct, which is, wow, that's probably how a lot of people stick with their Christianity. It's like, they're convinced it's true, and then they look for support to show that that's true. But this was going back to the story. It brings me up to, like 23, 24. Now, at this point, I had moved out of home already, right? So I did not have to deal with my parents like constantly hounding me. Hey, you still got to go to church and whatnot. I didn't have to.
No, I don't.
Yeah, it's like, I worked as a retail manager, and retail managers unfortunately have to work while the mall is open. So yep, darn. Sorry, I got Sam Goodies have to stay open. I got. Oh, Sam Goody, you remember Sam Goody? Yeah. Was that a thing in Canada?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
We had him. We had him. Yeah.
Oh. You remember even like music stores in the mall? There's a mall that's just about a mile away from me. And
not in a music store, but a record store. I worked.
Yeah.
Very well known one here in Canada.
They don't have any anymore. Like Best Buy is like the biggest mall in the store in the mall that carries CDs, and the next store after that is Hot Topic. If you want CDs, you go to. And
You get all
I
the
actually
cool
miss
industrial
music
shit.
stores. I actually miss.
Yeah,
them.
me too, man. I loved working in one. I worked for a company called Sam the Record Man, and if there's anyone who's Canadian in the audience, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
I was in Alaska at the time. We had nothing. They just got an Olive Garden about 10 years ago, and they got their first Target about 10 years ago also. So if you can imagine that, like an entire state that didn't have Target.
Sorry, Seth the Heathen. I am old, so that's how come I remember Sam the Record Man.
This is like sometimes I feel a little bit old too. You know, I start talking about these like 90s references and 90s. People are like, what's that? I remember my wife and I once took a coworker of ours out to a spaghetti place, and on the placemat there was a rotary phone, and our friend was like, "How do you even dial on that?" It's like, oh no, I felt my hairline recede at that point. I couldn't handle it.
Suddenly I had arthritis in places I never had it before.
Right. That was just and like my sister is 10 years younger than I am, right? But I swear in those 10 years is a generation gap. Okay. I had New Kids on the Block, she had the Backstreet Boys, and apparently that's enough of a difference in how we were raised. Plus she also she went to I remember this is one of my proudest moments. As a big brother, she had just started going to a 7th and 8th grade Christian school, and for her birthday, I had bought her a shirt, her very first band shirt for the band Godsmack, and because she didn't exactly have a social filter, which most kids don't have at 12, she decided to wear it to school one day, and apparently that got her a very stern talking to. From the principal. Yeah, she didn't last very long. She went to public school.
They took that name from an Alice in Chains song, by the way.
No, I don't know. I don't even know too much about that. I know there are 2 songs that everybody else knows, like Voodoo and that other one. I didn't know anything else about it, but I bought her that shirt and she wore it. Like, yeah,
the name Godsmack came from an Alice in Chains song on, I think it's on Dirt, I think. Someone will correct me in the audience if I'm wrong. It's either it was either Facelift or Dirt. I'm pretty sure it was Dirt.
So I caught on to grunge way too late. I mean, I know the beginnings of it, you know, like in the early 90s and whatever. I caught on by the time like Garbage was really hitting its swing. By the time it's not even really grunge anymore, and it was like a lot more pop palatable. And going back, wow, I really wish I was there to hear this turn of music when you started getting rid of the hair bands and you replaced it with flannel. I wish I could go back.
Roses was in the middle. They kind of were like the bridge over to that new sound.
It was, and like I feel so sorry for new hair bands that came out in like 1989 or 1991, right? Like Candlebox probably would have hit it big if they weren't like overtaken by grunge music. And suddenly it's like
sort of slid into it a little bit. I mean, because they were right at that cusp point where people were like, actually, I still like Candlebox. They're pretty good. They got some good tunes.
But my musical taste is completely like off the rails now. I listen to some
huge spectrum for me.
Yeah, like to prepare for this conversation, I was actually listening to Shostakovich's Fugue in A major from Opus number 67. It's like, really, this is the kind of stuff I listen to.
I love classical music. It's good stuff.
I do. I love fugues. I love the artistic creativity within a confined space. It's like a fugue is this very specific kind of music. You'd think there's not a lot of design space there, but they go completely crazy. There's a fugue out there that is based on the music of Britney Spears. I can wrap my mind around that. That's nice. Napalm Death. This is the first time I'm even hearing about it. I'm sorry. The only reason I know the song Rooster is because it was on Rock Band once. I am a poor representative of my generation. I apologize. Oh, hey, Ted. Okay, so anyway, this brings us up to like early adulthood. I keep on getting derailed because there's so much fun stuff to talk about the 90s. And so I just kind of started living my life like I just kind of left it behind. All the times that I spent studying the Bible and studying theology, I just kind of stopped. And I used to have, because like, you know, everybody and their little sister had a blog back then, right? And I used to have some religious writing, and then it just kind of stopped. And it just kind of like faded away. And I guess it's like, okay, I've never really thought of applying the word to myself, but I guess I'm an atheist. And it was not like a kaboom moment. It was just like, oh, that's what there's a word to describe this, and that
Like a
word
mini
is atheist.
epiphany.
Yeah. I don't know what Nightwish is. Send it to me.
Nightwish, they got some pretty cool shit, actually.
Yeah. Send it to me.
Very
I love
melodic,
bizarre
very
music.
heavy, melodic. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, send it to me, please, please, please.
Some of it's almost operatic with like heavy stuff underneath it. It's pretty cool.
Sweet. When I was
Sweet's a totally different band. I'm just kidding.
I fall right into that one. Yeah,
you did. You
no matter what you say, there's gonna be like Garbage is my all-time favorite grunge band, if you can even call it them grunge. Right?
I wouldn't call them. Well, maybe very
they're tail end grunge. No, but on a Facebook group that I was in, they were asking, what are your favorite female-led bands? And that's mine. So I said Garbage.
And Four Non Blondes.
I actually got a complaint about that from the moderator. It's like, you know what? This is a valid post, and they were asking a legitimate question. Why would you insult the post like that? And I had to explain, no. There is a band called Garbage. And the band called Garbage actually fits in with the theme of the question. They were asking about female-led bands. How have you not heard of Garbage? They had a James Bond theme song. This is not an obscure group. Apparently, they'd never heard of them. So, yay for obscure grunge groups. But
Concrete Blonde, that's probably my favorite female-led. Sorry, I had to Google that. I couldn't remember their name. Like, who does that song? Joey.
That's the only song, Joey.
Yeah, Concrete Blonde's fucking amazing. They were all the songs I wrote were about like the Vampire Lestat series and all that sort of shit, right? From back.
Oh, I read that for a hot minute too.
Yeah,
I had a vampire phase, and then I discovered
I have fangs actually from back then.
Really.
yeah, you can pop them in there with these little meltable wax things. You pop them in there, and you got fangs and shit.
That's like vampires. What when it was still cool to be vampires. None of this sparkly nonsense, right? So I was like, and it's not vampires. It's not even the first wave of when vampires got popular. I'm sure there was a vampire phase back in the 60s or 70s or something. But yeah, that was my vampire growing up. The Vampire Lestat, right? And that was my very first ever Brad Pitt movie, was Interview with the Vampire. And for a longest time, Brad Pitt was the most represented actor in my movie collection on the strength of his performance in Interview with the Vampire.
Second favorite band of all time, right there.
The Cranberries. I love the Cranberries. My favorite song of the Cranberries, nobody ever remembers a song of theirs called Analyze, but that is a very uplifting sounding song. I don't even know what the song is about. Just listening to her sing that song and
sad day when she passed away.
It was. Let's take a moment for Dolores O'Riordan.
Yeah, we did. Actually, we went out to our little drinking spot when the musicians we love pass away, and we listen to all their tunes and drink a few beers and cheers them and whatnot for about an hour. So
my passed on artist is Amy Winehouse, passed away too young. Just when I was getting to appreciate American blues music.
Phenomenal voice that woman had.
Oh, a surprisingly powerful voice. Yep. On her. Like you see a picture of her on her album cover, and then you play Back to Black for the first time. It's like, oh, you didn't expect this. It was a shocking moment when I discovered Amy Winehouse. Okay, so anyway, I'm moving out of Alaska and I moved to Oregon. Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
To address this, Temple of the Dog was a band put together in tribute to Andrew Wood, who was the lead singer for a band called Mother Love Bone, who most of the members eventually became what we now know as Pearl Jam. And I actually had tickets to see Alice in Chains and Mother Love Bone at a place called the Town Pump here in Vancouver. And I was sitting on the stairs having a beer. I'm like, it's such a shame that Andrew died, because now we got this backup band called Mookie Blaylock playing with Alice in Chains. And I remember having a beer with this guy sitting beside me whose name happened to be Eddie. And I bought him a beer and we're shooting shit. And I go, yeah, Alice in Chains is great. He goes, yeah, I'm good friends with them. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I was the singer of the band you saw first. Oh, really? Which was Eddie Vedder. So I bought Eddie Vedder a beer at the Town Pump. And they were called Mookie Blaylock at the time, which is why their album 10 is called 10, because that was Mookie Blaylock's jersey number. So and it was a tribute to their original name before they changed it to Pearl Jam. Soundgarden. Well, Matt Cameron from Soundgarden and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden were involved in Temple of the Dog. and they had Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament and Mike McCready were the other members. So it was like a mishmash of Soundgarden and what we now know as Pearl Jam. Anyways, it was a great tribute album. One of my all-time favorite songs, though, in tribute for Andrew Wood, is a song called Wood, but WOLD with a question mark, by Alice in Chains. It's going to be one of my favorite songs. There's that one, and I think... well, anyway, let's get back to the story.
No. I could talk about music from that era for a long time. Unfortunately, like I said, I caught on late. My very first Pearl Jam song was "Last Kiss." So, oops, sorry. Nobody even remembers that they covered that song. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no, yeah.
And somebody brought up Soundgarden. It's like, unfortunately, the only song I know about them is Spoon Man. And I love that song because it's in like 14/4 time. Like the rhythm of that song is insane. If you ever try like tapping along to it, it'll be weird. Oh, and yeah, just so you know, trivia. My favorite James Bond theme song was the one that Chris Cornell did. I'm huge on James Bond theme songs. That's like the only reason I watch the movies anymore, just to hear who's going to do the song.
He's definitely miss Cornell too.
Yes.
Yeah. I got to see them live a bunch of times, so I'm pretty happy with that. I
never saw Soundgarden. I never saw Audio Slave. This is the curse of living in Cincinnati. Nobody cool comes here. I think we just canceled the Justin Bieber concert, but otherwise, like, we get nothing. Like, this is a stark contrast to Portland, right? In Portland, the music scene there is so thick. It's like, okay, we have a free weekend. Let's see who's playing tonight. Let's go see who we want to watch. And there's a whole bunch of big names, even if it's like a little tiny show, like Shiny Toy Guns is going to be there, or Vanessa Carlton or Vertical Horizon. Someone's showing in Portland. Here in Cincinnati, they have a couple of big music festivals, like Bunbury is here, a couple of others, Riverbend. But you don't get a lot of big name concerts or even small name concerts. And I miss having an alternative music scene in my backyard. I kind of want one back. Yeah. I try to keep talking to my wife. It's like, let's move to Portland. It's really nice there.
It is.
Yeah, but unlike me, like, I'm willing to move thousands of miles away from Alaska to pursue job opportunities and experiences. My wife, when she first moved out of home, moved all the way from Pleasant Ridge to Deer Park, which is like 3 miles away from each other. Like, the idea that she had to, like, she couldn't just walk home. She had to bike home. That's far. That's far. So I'm convinced not only am I, stuck here, but probably like the next 3 generations of descendants are going to be living here too. So I'm here. No, but that's so I moved from Alaska to Portland on the advice of an ex-girlfriend. We don't talk anymore, but her sister and I were so close that she was the best woman at my wedding. Yeah. So I moved, and then from Portland, I moved here to Cincinnati. I used to work for Luxottica. They own Lens Crafters and Sunglass Hut, those big name sunglass places. And their home offices were here in Cincinnati. I was like, okay, I'll go there and work for their home office, and that brings me here. And I'm here in a brand new environment. Nobody knows me. Nobody really cares about my religious beliefs because it's just not the kind of thing that usually comes up in conversation. And I find out. Yeah. And I find out that it's because now I'm in the Midwest, they just kind of assume Christian. Right. Yeah. And I was like, I was pretty happy. Just, okay, fine. This is just something we don't talk about. I'm just a very quiet atheist. Okay. I can live with that. This isn't part of my identity too much anyway. This would bring, and then let's see, 2015, I did not know that these people existed until about 2014, 2015, when I met my very first real live young earth creationist. And like, I heard, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, I heard that there were some people who thought that, but this was my first time, like, actually experiencing it. And it was shocking how far behind they were, not just on like deep scientific knowledge, but like on basic mathematics. Okay. Like, anybody who studied trigonometry to any degree is going to know how they calculated the size of the earth. Right. Yes. And anybody with anything past, second year biology in high school is going to know, wait a second, there is actually a reason that explains the diversity of life on this planet. And at least enough to start questioning the stuff that Answers in Genesis puts out. Am I right? Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, nowadays, thank goodness we have channels like Vice Rhino that go in there and actually explain the science along with the horrible claims from Answers in Genesis. But back in the day, I didn't know about that, and so I kind of took upon it myself. Forget about the religious beliefs; we'll worry about those later. Okay? Can I just teach you about some basic math? Okay. And I don't know if you know this thing, like if you hold your finger out to here and you're looking at the wall in the opposite side of the room, if you close one eye and then close the other, your finger actually appears to move along the background, right? This is called the parallax. And this is how they first started determining the distance of stars. Even a simple concept like that, they had never heard of it. And if you know the distance between your eyes, and you know the distance to your finger, you can actually calculate how far that wall is based on how far it appears to move. This is how they started calculating the distance of the stars. This is how we know how far away they are. It's kind of a mean way to say it, but I just kind of started talking to them about this and started trying to correct their lack of scientific thinking. And that was when, like, that was the switch that went off in my head. It's like, there are actually people like this.
Yeah.
I can't stay quiet anymore. So I know one of the questions that you like to ask is where you turn that corner from, okay, fine, you don't believe in God, to you feel like you got to say something about it. That was my moment. Working with two young earth creationists and having so much downtime where we worked that we could have these conversations. And I was like, I got to do something. And then fast forward about 5 years of these conversations with them. I don't know where they are now. I don't talk to them. But then I meet this guy named Ethan, who runs a channel called Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. And his very first channel, or very first show on his channel, was he was talking about, he was in a debate against I almost hate to say it, presuppositional apologist. Because we all know how we feel about presuppositional apologists, right? And they made cleaning products out of him. Okay, he was being turned into hot dog meat, and he knew it. And so I like reached out to him later. It's like, hey, do you want to talk about this? Do you want to get into the fold? And he'll tell his story. I think he's scheduled to be on your channel, what, in a week or so?
I think so. Yeah. Hang on a
second.
second.
He'll tell more about his side of the story. I don't want to get into it too far, but he's the one who actually started getting me into YouTube atheism, where it's like, and you have to remember, I've been admiring people like you guys from afar for a long time. Okay.
Ethan
watching
is, June 1st.
June 1st. Okay. So yeah, he's got about a week. But watching modern day debates and watching Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience, I've been doing this very quietly for a long time. And now here I am, a virtual like atheist nobody in the scene. And it's only been about 2 months. And now I'm actually getting to talk to and associate with and just have casual conversations with the people that I've been looking up to for a very long time. And it feels like you guys have all been so welcoming and so like you especially, you know, it's like you were the first one to say, come on my channel and tell your story. Right?
Really?
You were actually, I talked to you before I talked to Ethan, before I ever met him, before he put me on his show and before I had the show, What the Puck, where no, and like the thing that the concept that I have for my show is there's so many discussions about religious ideas and whatnot. Like on the show Atheist Experience, which I understand the format of the show is a live call-in show. You only have so much time to talk to everybody who wants to talk to you. You kind of have to hurry some conversations along. You don't have as much time as you would like. And so I came up with this idea for a show. It's like, what if we had like an AXP type caller, but we gave them all the room that they wanted to explain their position. And the only thing that I'm going to do is ask qualifying questions or ask deeper questions. Like, okay, well, you talked about this. Can you explain this a little bit more? And that's when I did, you know, like I've been a fan of, what's his name? Anthony Magnabosco, Street Epistemology, right? And I appreciate where that's going, but I also like Shannon Q does a little bit differently because she's like, I want to understand your position, but here's mine. And you know, it's like, and the conversations she has with people that she strongly disagrees with, she actually lets them know, okay, you're not really moving my needle here. She's not afraid to directly challenge it. And unlike street epistemology, where it's more about, well, what would get you to change your mind? No, that's slightly different. I wish to emulate the Shannon Q style, where it's like, okay, this is what I believe going into it. Tell me everything you believe, and I'm going to give you as much space as possible to spell out your whole beliefs. And that's what the puck is about. So that's where I talk to people. I talk to someone about really sit down and explain to me what moral objectivity really means.
There's no such thing. That's the thing.
I don't disagree with you, but there are people who do. So I
agree upon objectively, I guess, but it's still subjective.
No, and that's where I am too. That's where I start. But I actually want to hear the full case given by somebody else in a format where they can answer questions if I have something immediate. Like I can watch an inspiring philosophy video. He has like a 12-part series about moral objectivity, right? That's fine, but he's not going to directly respond to questions. If I can get someone in real time that knows this and believes this, and at least I can interact with them, that's the kind of show I want to have. Jen, you're absolutely right. We would be there for 4 hours. My stamina only lasts for about 1, maybe 2 if it's interesting. So I get
for the after party, mister.
Yeah, but I have plenty of orange soda for the after party. I will be fine. No, like I said, Jen, I absolutely understand why, and the line is like this too, which is a new show that they have on Sundays. I get it. You only have so much time. It's not the fault of the show, and it's not the fault of the host. They're doing what they're supposed to do to run the show. But I really do wish that a lot of these callers had a little bit more space. Let's at least hear it and understand it. And I wish, and that's what I base my show on, I wish that we had more time to understand it. Even if we end up disagreeing afterwards, let's try to understand what the belief is before we start saying we don't believe it. And that brings us very neatly to now, where I've been passed around through a couple of different shows now. Earlier this week, I did the Daily Atheist morning show for the second time. Yesterday, I was on S.J. Thomason's channel with Craig Reed and Ethan. So yes, I was on there.
Craig and I actually get along. So Craig and I have had chats multiple times in messaging and shit. All him and I talk. We don't really talk about religion because we know we both have our stances on it. So we talk about music and punk rock and the way it was in the 80s. And we reminisce about how we used to go to shows and shit like that. I actually think Craig's all right outside of his beliefs, right? So.
Yeah. Oh, he's a lot of fun to talk to. He's very intense.
He is.
Yeah. And like sometimes, like when I just really need to hear a person who's fired up, I'll turn on one of Craig Reed's response videos. It's like, if you really want to hear someone passionate and excited, you don't have to go very far. Just listen to this guy talk and forget about the subject material, right? Of course, I'm going to disagree with that, but just to hear him like just lay down that belief. I wish I had that kind of like I have the conviction, but I don't have that vocal presentation that he does. I'm okay with that. I have my own niche, but
he's got his style. He definitely does.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a lot of fun to talk to. I think like our entire conversation of 2 hours was like only tangentially related to theology and beliefs. Most of the time we talked about why you're not supposed to put ketchup on hot dogs and why you're not supposed to put pineapple on pizza, which I don't understand. But what's that?
I'm a mustard guy for hot dogs.
Okay, I put ketchup on my ketchup. I'm the wrong person to talk to about this.
Ketchup is okay. I don't really use it a lot, but maybe on French fries.
Yeah. And just to answer Rory's question, yes, I do mean like a lot of people think that I'm referencing the mischievous sprite from English mythology. No, I mean the chunk of rubber. I am a chunk of rubber. And the reason was that? Yeah, that's it. Like people come up with very nice, long, flowery names for themselves, and that's fine. They're like a rationality rules, genetically modified skeptic, or Neil the 604 atheist, and that's cool.
Yeah, that guy's a dick.
But I looked back in your entire history. All right, my name is the shortest name of any guest that you've ever had on here. I am just one syllable. Puck.
Probably. Yeah.
That's it. I just want to be known as Puck. I just want to just appropriate a whole syllable just for myself. That's me, and it works very nicely with a show called What the Puck. So, so what else? That brings us back to the current day. So what else did you want to know about my story?
Well, how is your relationship with your family now since you've
Oh, I forgot to
come
tell
out?
you that story.
Yeah.
So in about 2015, again, this is about the time when I was associating with the young Earth creationists. I finally decided to I guess the best way to put it is to come out, right? And so I put it on my Facebook. It's like, guys, I'm an atheist. Um, and most of my friends were like, you know what? I thought you always were an atheist for some reason. Some of them were a little shocked. My parents were my dad didn't care, right? Like he's still in the insurance Catholic phase. He's fine. He's more curious as to why I came to that conclusion, would be happy to talk to me about it. My mom, on the other hand,
Uh-oh. You've been challenged.
I'll go by dad. Uh-oh. Well,
One
come
letter
on the
left.
show. I'm sure Neil would be happy to have you. So but my
Well,
mom,
she's
like,
been on many times.
oh, okay, never mind. You win. My mom, my parents, they live in Alaska. We live here in Cincinnati, and so every December they send us a package. Because my birthday and my wife's birthday are also in December, so they just send us a big package with plenty of presents for both birthday and Christmas.
That's cool.
Fine. Um, but that year there were birthday presents for me, clearly labeled as birthday presents. There were birthday presents for my wife. There were Christmas presents for my wife. And there was a card in there for me. This is an index card that said, "Atheists don't get Christmas presents."
That's okay.
And I was like, okay, now you know what? I am willing to give the charitable guess that they were probably just saying that in jest, because there were, like I said, there were still gifts in there for me for my birthday, but no explicitly Christmas gifts. And it's like, okay, it's like, if this is the worst that happens, I honestly have it better off than most people.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people have it a
Well,
lot harder than this when it comes to family.
many do, yes.
Yeah, I'm having a conversation with someone on What the Puck next Wednesday, explaining CPTSD and just how difficult it is to come out of a strongly religious household.
Mhm.
So I had it easy, and I compared to a lot of people. So that's why I love deconversion stories. I don't really have a very there wasn't a lot of tension in my story, just education. And for me, dropping church was probably as simple as, well, I guess I have Sundays free now. But for people who live in much more insular societies and cities where it's not just as simple as, I'm not going to go to church anymore. Now you have to explain it to family. Now you have the friends that you thought you had, they won't even talk to you anymore because they're afraid that you might influence their kids as they're growing up, and they don't want their kids to be around someone who is influenced by the devil. I'm sure you've heard that before. It's
Of
like,
course.
these are the stories that are most interesting to me. And my niche in atheism, if I could have one, is helping people who are in these societies and in these communities who want to leave or have just left and need to find that community again, and need to find that support system again that they thought that they had with their church, but it turns out it was only there because they were part of that belief system. That's why I wanted Exmolex on my show, because she's like 7th generation Mormon, right? It runs deep in her family, and listening to her story over YouTube was fascinating. And as soon as I had my show, I was like, I want her on here, and I want her telling that story. And I was so glad that she got to tell her story on your channel too.
Yeah, she sure did. And I would say I find in all the interviews that I've done, which I think is somewhere over 200 and some odd by now. I'd say it's about 50-50, give or take. Maybe a little more where it wasn't so bad with the family afterwards. Maybe we'll say 55-45. But there's quite a few that had that lost family members because of it, or even spouses, shit like that. It does happen because, some people just, they can't deal with it. So, yeah.
Like interfaith marriages are especially interesting to me.
Tough.
Where one person is left, but the other person is still very strongly believing. It's like they're going through challenges I can't even imagine. So,
oh, sure. Just ask Seth Anders. His wife is still a believer.
And like I'm trying to think about other ones too, but like I had a friend of mine, a very, very close friend of mine, who she was actually the one who invited the missionaries to come and have a chat with me back when I was 17, 18 years old. She and I are still good friends to this day, and she has left the church also. And I kind of did first, and she looked me up after we hadn't talked to each other in about 4 or 5 years, and she said, I have a problem, and I think you're the only one who can understand. And she told me that she was starting to question the church and starting to not believe. And then I kind of helped walk her through that process of it's okay. Where the atheist life, it's not as bad as you would think. There's actually a lack of the drinking and debauchery and orgies that they would lead you to believe us atheists have.
No, that's heathenry.
but it's like, so that was my first
Ocean.
that was my first experience, like helping someone out of she was Mormon and she was living in Salt Lake City, Utah. So that was my first example of like trying to help someone get out of a very, very deep community of religious beliefs. So
yeah. Well, I'm happy that you still have a form of relationship with your family. So that's always good to hear that sort of thing happens.
Yeah.
Because I've heard some pretty heartbreaking tales where people are basically disowned by their families and
oh yeah, and like I can't imagine why a family would go to such lengths.
I can't either. It's blows my mind. Like, you believe in something so much that you're willing to give up your actual family for that. That's just, to me, is like, that's something you shouldn't be involved in, because that's almost cultish behavior. Get the hell out of there.
Yeah, and my sister, she's like still deep, right? Like she's still a practicing Catholic. She has a very large tattoo of the Archangel Michael on her back shoulder. And she calls going to church "make mom a proud time," and that's cool. I'm glad that they are close. And I'm still very close with my sister. We have a weekly Monopoly night that we do on her Twitch channel, where you're gonna love this. We're playing a first one to win 25 games series of Monopoly, and the loser has to host our parents for Christmas 2021. And I'm losing, so send as much support as you can.
Just muddle your way through. It's the best you can do. But my friend, we are closing in on the hour, so I'd like you to shill out whatever you can. The shows that you're involved with, if you have any personal pages that you want to shout out. I did put some links below so people can stalk you on like Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So
I actually do not have a YouTube page of my own. I focus my attention on helping right now, mostly Ethan. In his channel, it should be down there, Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist on YouTube, and he's also on a Facebook group. He's also on Twitter, and my Twitter is down there. I make weekly appearances on that show, and what he's not telling you is that when he does have a big name guest, like he had Godless Engineer on his show yesterday.
John's good people.
I'm the one who helps him prep for those shows. Okay, I'm the one. You remember Cyrano de Bergerac, right? You know that story. Yeah, I'm Cyrano, and he's Tristan, and all y'all are Roxanne. Okay, so I'm. So yes, but I like. He's got a lot of great content, and I try to help him behind the scenes. It's like, okay, you're having this guest on. This is what they want to talk about. Here's some things for you to watch and read, so that when they come on, you don't have to start completely from scratch, right? And I'm also very huge into helping Jenna Belk. If I'm sure you've heard that name.
I've had her on.
I love helping her and her team behind the scenes, try to get her message out there. She's got a wonderful YouTube channel called Atheist. Yeah. And now, if you missed it, a couple of nights ago, she was actually starting to read Lord of the Rings. So
very cool. Does she do it ASMR style?
I don't know how you can read anything as dry as Lord of the Rings in anything but ASMR style. Like it's so boring. Like I haven't read it since like grade school, right? But isn't Return of the King basically like a 400-page epilogue?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like this is so dry. It's like reading through the book of Numbers. Who begets who begets who? Because it's like
all the begets. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's move on. Okay. Thank you very much, IQ, for giving all those links. I appreciate it. Yeah, my show on Ethan's channel, What the Puck, is on Wednesday nights at 9:30 Eastern time. So go and watch me with special guests. Next week I have actually Jenna Belk, and then the week after that I have Craig Reed, and I don't remember who I have after that. But yeah. So thank you very much, Neil, for letting me come on here and tell my story.
No, well, you paid me enough, so I figured why not. Just kidding.
You guys are wonderful. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you guys in the after party.
Absolutely. And hey, man, if you ever want another guest, I'm usually open for hopping on someone's show.
Right on.
Yours, I mean, or you. Well, I think Ethan wants to have me on his as well at some point. So
he's a great guy. He's a lot of fun to be on a channel with.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining me today, Puck. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you, as I knew it was going to be, because you're a very personable, high energy guy, and I kind of dig that. So anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And if you are interested in joining Puck and I for a little bit of an after party, I can't go for too long because I have other commitments that I've made for this evening. So I'll just let you guys know we can go for about an hour and a little bit, and then I got to get the fuck out of here. So anywho, I have, it's actually, without going into too many details, because work doesn't like it when I do that. It is work related. So anywho, we are going to do that probably in about 10 minutes, because I was like, take a little bit of break. I really have to pee right now because I'm already about 4 beers in. So I would say you don't buy beer, you rent it. So, in this harsh time that we're going through right now with this pandemic, I know a lot of us are stuck at home for most part. I mean, I'm usually home anyways, even when I'm not pandemic bound shit, but or I never leave my building. I always go either here or my buddy's place. But remember, guys, to stay well, stay safe, and above all, be kind. And like I always say at the end of these shows, like the late great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge.